Hello, everybody, and welcome to the CAF News. I'm here as usual with my friend Brice on a special episode. Brice, how you doing?
I'm doing really good today, Kevin.
Good, good. Good to hear. Today, we are going to talk about a big idea in a big book that Brice has written and is publishing. That big idea? Digital transformation isn't something you finish. It's something you build into your company's operations. Brice's new book, it's called Digital Momentum. It's about how strategy, architecture, and execution have to move together continuously, especially in a world of AI and autonomous systems. So let's start with the big question. What has actually changed in the enterprise over the last few years, Brice?
Well, the enterprise itself, I think, has been progressing along, five major mega trends, if you like, are sort of pushing the enterprise to do better business, to do more with less. And these trends include things like accelerating technologies, different takes on business models that are, for instance, moving more towards platform-centric ecosystems. And what this means is the enterprise has to be more agile and adaptive than ever before. In the past, the enterprise had time to, have massive projects to upgrade as new technologies came in. Now the changes are happening so quickly, they just don't have that luxury of change anymore to have those separate projects. And so what they really need to do is align their strategy, their architecture, and their execution on an ongoing basis to deliver the results that they can, improving capabilities as they go, without launching these massive projects that end up failing anyways.
Interesting. Okay. So yes, strategy, architecture, execution as a continuous process. Good.
Exactly. Yes.
How, if I may, would that link to the topic sucking the oxygen out of every room, AI, and agentic systems? How does that affect this kind of fundamental shift that you're seeing?
Well, that's really, really topical. It's huge. One of the things that we called out in the book, Digital Momentum, and has really come forward. It's a trend that started, but now is really, become crisp, is things like OpenClaw, NemoClaw, agentic systems that can actuate in their environment. This is a huge change that's happening right now. As a result of some of these advancements, we're seeing an agentic market that's going to be growing from, according to Forbes, from $5 billion to almost $240 billion. I think at this point, every CIO needs to be in the game to understand what's happening in the agentic space, how do they take advantage of it, and what it essentially means to their organization. So what does it mean? Well, it means that operating systems, workflows, and decisions need to be made faster than ever. And here's the thing. This new agentic technology that's coming through, things like OpenClaw, NemoClaw, they're pretty recent. Like, this is from the beginning of agentic. I mean, from when I started writing this book, in September 2025 till now, we've seen this come from large language models. Agents sort of, popped up, and now we have these actuators. So the real question is, what's the next step? How do they deal with it? And do you have a strategy to look at and architect that white space that's coming at your company right now, and make intelligent, resilient decisions to adopt what's coming, because it's going to be coming really quick.
Architecting the white space. It seems like everybody, at least 6 months ago, was screaming, what's your AI strategy? Everybody needed an AI strategy. Now it's becoming more specific, and agentic strategy, control of the future operations, architecting the white space.
I think
what does that
what we're
actually
seeing
mean?
as the new advances, whatever takes to the forefront dominates what I need to, the sort of the bandwagon of the day. What do I need to do with my strategy? So 6 months ago, people were saying, "Oh yeah, we need an AI strategy," and they did. That's where we were at the time. Now we have agentic stuff that's coming on board, literally less than a year later now. And guess what? You do need a strategy to deal with that. It adds a whole new type of system that we're dealing with, systems of action that extend the whole Jeffrey Moore framework, systems of engagement, systems of intelligence, systems of record. Now we have something systems of action, and that brings with it new concerns. It brings the need for guardrails, but it also brings new empowerment and innovation. In a few months, probably 6 months to a year, we're going to have something new come on board. Maybe it's at some point it's probably going to be non-AI specific. It might be something like quantum intelligence or, maybe quantum optimization or something. And if we're not thinking forward how to include these things in our organization, we're going to be in trouble. And I think the good news, though, is we can build an architecture framework in our companies that allows us to include these things if we do a little bit of planning. It doesn't change the fact that systems are still systems and exchange information. And what we really need to do is understand that and understand the characteristics of those systems and recognize that there's characteristics in systems that we have, or combinations of characteristics that we haven't thought of yet. So we have these systems of record, we have these systems of action. Well, guess what? Is there something like systems of orchestration that orchestrates the agents that we need to focus on and get our thinking into? I mean, we can envision what they're going to look like, and then as they come, we'll be ready for them.
Interesting. So stepping back from agentic, stepping back from AI, what if we stepped all the way back? What do you think of, and how would you describe this digital momentum in simple terms?
Simple terms. It's about being resilient to change and building an architecture that's composable. I put it really simply. It's like this old plug and play idea. When I bring in a new technology, I want to build to just plug it in and use it. But that has a whole lot of stuff that comes with it. That has, how do I manage this new technology as it comes on board? How do I govern it? What are the ethical guardrails I need to put in place? And how do I set those up so that no matter what I put into the system, whatever new technology I add in, I'm ready to deal with it with them. There's going to be some disruption, but minimal disruption. And I think there's also a maturity curve that's happening with this, in that today we're going to be thinking very much like we've done with all our architecture. Oh, I'm building a capability out. How do I build that capability? I put it in my capability map. I link it to my value stream. I do some architecture modeling. Wonderful. What happens at the point when these systems become intelligent and can reinvent our capabilities dynamically? And we give them a little bit of leeway so that our organizations can evolve. So I think we're looking at a maturity model that starts today with something very rigid, but necessarily as the maturity advances, is going to become more flexible, more reactive, and more have the ability to change dynamically.
Okay, but then, I mean, even though there is this dynamic change, it seems like the fundamentals of business aren't changing. The tempo certainly has, but how can we kind of understand these patterns of change and instead of just reinventing everything?
Great question. So if we look at what's happening in the world, the book calls out 5 megatrends that we really follow. And for instance, looking at Agentic now really is just the continued, the successive thinking of like, oh, this is where we're going. You're going to have Agentic. And I think if we look at the megatrends, I mean, a couple of them, and you really hit 2, I think, in the business area. One is technology is going to become more capable so we can offer more into the business model. We can provide a better immersive experience that we couldn't do before. What that also means is we're going to move from a product mindset to more of a experiential mindset. Service, they call it, the service dominant logic mindset. And it's this idea that we're dealing more with a platform ecosystem where I can customize my experience rather than buy one product. So in other words, if I have to put a nail into that wall, it's not a matter of me going and buying a hammer and a nail anymore. There might be a whole bunch of options where I can get somebody who will put it in. I might, while they're putting in the nail, I might want entertainment. I can, we can extend it to whatever we want. And of course, this ability to build custom experiences also means that we don't know the outcomes up front. And so it means with business, we also have to be careful in what we allow our clients to build, so that at the end of the day, they get something that is wholesome and good and improves what they're doing. So I think that we're also going to be expected to provide some sort of ethical guardrails and build trust. And trust is going to be a lot more than just, yeah, you didn't lose all my data in a breach. It's going to include things like, I trust that what you're delivering is going to actually help me. And we're going to start to rely more on these companies and their AI to provide great advice. So the business model is really shifting, in short, to this platform-centric, immersive experience world that we're going to be moving into.
Interesting. Um, I'd like to make a similar shift, but in some ways it's an extension of what you're talking about, and talk a little bit about why transformation fails. And you know,
Okay.
you're talking, I may want to hammer into that wall. Well, I probably actually want to be hanging a picture or something. You know, I probably have, you know, something in mind. Um, and I think the book argues that failure and transformation comes often from looking at things as projects
Yeah.
instead of seeing capabilities. I think you even, you know, say stop funding projects, start building capabilities. What does that look like in practice? What are the basic
Yeah.
differences for you, and how do people start doing that day by day?
Yeah, let me start. There's, I think, two symptoms that we see where this happens in the larger companies that I've worked with. The multi-million dollar digital transformation mindset. We see this with, I think, over 70% of these projects failing. And this is sort of a symptom of what's happening with mid-sized companies. It because they're not able to engage in such big transformation projects, they sense a lack of progress. They sense a lack of traction. So this failure manifests in two ways, but ultimately what's happening is about outcomes and delivering results. And the project mindset often builds a huge project to deliver a digital transformation. What we see a lot of times when the project is launched is people start to lose sight of what the actual outcomes are. They start to track progress in the project. The project's on time, and we start to lose sight. So one thing that happens is we start to get a phenomena where we start to track meaningless KPIs and outcomes as part of the project. Oh yes, I'm getting a better throughput rate, but I don't know what maybe the experience is like, or if anybody's actually going to buy it.
Yeah.
And the other sense is a lot of these projects have a long lead time between inception to actually delivering something to the person. So
Sure.
what we really want to do is flip that around. We want to use a minimum viable product mindset, adding incremental capabilities as we go forward, and we want to take that in our world. We also want to realize that we're building out capabilities. So there are little projects there, but I view them more along the lines of things that are happening in agile release trains than big boom digital transformations. And I think the other problem with this is, and the other root cause of the problem is the culture. So if interestingly enough, if you start to think about a company that does something, even a digital transformation, they're kind of bound in the world of Metcalfe's law, and that what they do reflects how their organization looks. And guess what? If they were never set up for rapid digital transformation, what they try to do looks like what didn't work in the past, and it builds it out. And so they start moving like crazy towards this thing that's not going to work. And you know what? They wonder why they're going to fail. And it's sad because there's a lot of great people, but really a culture shift is also needed. So when you're coming into this, the mindset isn't just shifting between capabilities or projects or this or that. It's recognizing that any shift that you're doing is a business shift, and starting at that level and ensuring that value traces to that business shift.
And when you say business shift, is this a business model
Exactly.
shift, or is it is?
Exactly. If I'm going to change something, I need a new business model to get really dramatic results. If I'm trying to improve processes, that's a wonderful thing to do. Like, you can do process improvement, improve it 5, 10%, even 20% is really good. But if you change the business model, you're going to do things that change operations 30, 40, 50%, and potentially provide other strategic avenues for business. And one of those big things that's happening is the direction that we're going. It's almost like a strategic principle that we know we're going to be moving towards greater platform-oriented business. And so when we change our business model, we also want to make sure we change it in that direction with that in mind.
Okay, so platforms that enable capabilities that drive these different new business models.
Well, I mean like a
And that's
business,
like the
I mean like a
CIO's
business
job now.
model as a platform. So I'm working in an ecosystem with other players, and I need to consider what they're doing, how I'm delivering results to them. And then I'm building, if you're using the platform analogy, I have a platform to play in that ecosystem. So as I want to deliver new business stuff in that ecosystem, I need to build out my capabilities and I need to build out new ways of doing it. I can either do that manually or I can let that be somewhat intelligent and evolutionary, but I need to address that. I need to provide more immersive experience for my clients. And they're demanding that yesterday. And it's already happening really right now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, for people out there, in the trenches doing this every day, whether it's just in their organization or specifically on transformation projects, what does this future ready enterprise look like, and how do, for example, our roles as EAs and maybe
Hmm.
the CIO role change in this platform ecosystem world?
We start to look at that future, the lens of the future. It builds on a lot of the principles that we've established now. So it doesn't mean that an architect today isn't doing something valid. And it really builds on this idea of traceability to value and value creation to the architectural changes that I
Okay.
do.
Yeah.
The big change, though, is I need to set back and think more at a principled level and how I'm going to enable the organization to be more reactive. So a lot of the things we're doing in architecture are going to move into operations and gradually shift over to be a lot more dynamic. So first of all, the architect isn't somebody that sets the ship off and says, "Yeah, there's my systems, they're going," and they sit back and watch it. They will need to be a part of it. There's a learning um, feedback system as this organization evolves that architect will learn from. And that learning will be used to set policy, to set guardrails on how that organization can evolve in the most future sense. It's going to be about an organization with agents that understands how to evolve itself to do the best business at a given time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah, I was going to say this smells a little bit like there's some AI. What AI what role does AI actually play in this? Where do you think it's going to help? Where do people maybe underestimate or misunderstand it today?
AI is going to be really responsible for driving this evolutionary change, this dynamic model. However, we also need to understand that like we're not at artificial general intelligence yet. I don't believe we're close. AI is really going to work to supplement what people are doing. And so the people that are able to leverage it, the people that are going to build to understand how to use AI, to build out the prompts that they can use to say, this is what the future enterprise looks like, go build it, and then learn from what they've done, reevaluate that whole design thing, right? It's almost like the AI will build architecture as a language that will then be interpreted very quickly into changes. And then we can, feedback, how did that work? I think that's the role of AI, but it's going to be very empowering because we're going to want to do more. On the flip side, I think a lot of the things that have been done a lot, AI is going to excel at that because it can find things that have been done a lot. Like for instance, if I'm trying to set up a operational data layer, getting a little bit technical here, and the AI seen that before 100 times, well, it's going to infer how to do it. You don't need a coder to necessarily get involved in the nitty gritty. Like they're going to probably need oversight, but as they go forward, it's going to say, yeah, this is the pattern. Let's do it. Bang, out it goes, and it's going to do that faster than a person alone. But without the
Mhm.
person, it's going to be really lacking really true creativity and the ability to handle general ideas and bring them in. And focus. Where does it focus? And that's where I think where people have to be involved.
Yeah. Yeah, I see that in a lot of areas that really it's more important to be able to direct,
Hmm.
which, you could also say is leadership. So I mean, what is going to be separating the leaders from everyone else in the next 1, 2, 3, dare we say 5 years?
It's simple. The ones that can change fast are going to be the leaders. And if you look at the maturity model we have in digital momentum, it starts with how do I change my legacy systems to promote that future change? So that you need a coherent plan to move my system so that it can do resilient change, not willy-nilly. You see a lot of stuff with legacy systems like, well, we're going to maybe modernize 20% of it. Forget that nonsense. It needs to be directed with a focused strategy that builds where you want to go for future resilience. So in other words, you're looking at that white space, and we can look at a great article, a great example of how to build out that white space with AI. A lot of people are bringing AI projects into their organization, and they've got all these legacy systems that they need to integrate them with. And guess what? The two, we've seen this, the two aren't fitting right now too nicely. So there's a lot of legacy upgrade needs to be done. But if you're just doing the legacy willy-nilly, you're going to miss that. You need to support and have an AI upgrade strategy that's going to move your ability to use AI, to use Agentic into the future. And in fact, I think we can start moving with the idea that we even know what technologies are going to be coming in the next year or two and prepare for that and building that more solid foundation. So it's, again, not just an AI project. In fact, one of the things we call out in the book is this idea that people are bringing in AI projects. They put it in a sandbox. Oh, here's my AI project, but they've never thought about how to integrate it. So they've got this sandbox working system that looks good. And now you have to take that huge step to make it real.
Yeah. Try to productionize that. Yeah. So interesting that you, in one word, said speed. And the name of the book, of course, is Digital Momentum.
Yeah.
Mass times velocity or acceleration. If people feel like they're kind of doing everything right, but still not making progress, what do you tell them? You must run into that in companies that you're consulting with. But what are the 1, 2, 3 kind of things that you tell people to help them move forward?
Yeah, let me give a really specific example. I'm going to kind of keep it a little bit anonymous, but I was talking with one company, and they had asked me outright. They go, "What would you do if you had spaghetti architecture? And everything's all over." And there's two parts to that answer. The first one is, why do you have a spaghetti architecture? What does it mean? Well, it means your systems you're not even doing sort of the basic enterprise service level of integration that you need to do. And so you've got these point-to-point systems springing up. So there's a problem there, right? And we need to address it. Two is, what do we need as a target to become composable? We need to set some time to go, where do I really want to go? And now there's a gap. And it's simply planning out that gap, but not in a willy-nilly way. It's about evolving maturity so that you can ensure that you're building the placeholders for future systems in a good way. And so there's a real component here, which is about evolving the integration component. And in fact, that's where a lot of the observations for digital momentum came from, was looking at, from an integration perspective, how do you build an integrated modern system, and how do you make it robust, right? So really, this is how do I take the current state of an organization, like that spaghetti organization, identify the problem, and move forward. And now, when we identify the problem, we say something like it's a spaghetti code or a spaghetti integration system, right? And we think that's a technology problem. Well, actually, there's an underlying cultural problem we also need to address there. The reason there are silos is because people weren't talking appropriately. So we need to go back to the organization and start to go right from the business models we want to be able to present to the public, to understanding our own org structure that we need to fit in. So this isn't about, I'm going to bring in a technology and it's going to fit my organization, and I'm not going to make any changes, because guess what? That is too rigid. It's about, if you want to change, you've got to look at everything as on the table. And the companies that succeed are going to be the ones that can make that really difficult change.
Interesting. Okay. Well, let me pose a final question, and kind of a meta question. Writing a book is no small undertaking. I imagine you used a little time on this. What problem are you trying to solve and address, and why did you write this book now?
I have been involved in a lot of digital transformations. Some would have been called successes, some would have been called failures. And it's interesting. Some of the ones that would actually be successes now at the time were considered failures, because maybe the budget was 10% or 20% too high. But in today's world where budgets are double or triple, it's like, wow, I'm actually proud of some of this stuff.
Yeah.
I've worked on projects, Kevin, a lot of good people, man, like really good people working with me, smart people, learned a lot of stuff. People worked evenings, weekends, trying really hard.
Yeah.
And they didn't realize they were marching off the cliff. And that's what really motivated me to take these lessons from my projects, from what other people have done, from discussions, in places like the Chief Architect Forum, taking the lessons learned and looking at, well, what can we do to prevent that from happening in the future? And at the same time, recognizing that we're not in a static world. There's changes. We talked to these 5 mega trends that are moving forward and what they really mean, so that people that, if you come in and you say, I did something 10 years ago and it worked, and I think it's going to work today, let's make sure people have the ammunition to really understand what they need to change to make it work today and give them a chance. At the end of the day, what I really want to see is successful outcomes. I don't want to see a number that 70% have failed. I'd like to see a number closer to there are no failures. And maybe this idea of even doing mass projects goes away and it becomes, yes, this organization is successful, and we recognize that IT is a part of that.
Yeah. Nice. All right. Well, thank you very much. If I were to try and summarize kind of the big ideas from this conversation, it feels like the companies that win aren't the ones that just complete a transformation. They're the ones who are able to continuously adapt, and that really means aligning strategy, architecture, execution, and enabling the organization to evolve over time.
Exactly.
It's a
Yeah,
great message.
exactly. And Kevin, thank you so much for having me. Just for the viewers, the book actually is in pre-release on April 3rd, so it's just around the corner. It will be released on April 27th, the printed versions. So I'm pretty excited about that. If anybody wants to continue a dialogue on this, I'm very excited about what we can do going forward. And again, thanks so much for having me, Kevin.
Sure, Brice. Congratulations on the book, and thanks for coming on to talk about digital momentum. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers. Thanks.